Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more, I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount, and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs, it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English Lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K /year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity /equity / inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen, and we haven't really talked since yesterday. My twin sister, May, and I are identical. At the end of our first year of college, I was in a car accident, and I ended up with a facial scar and major trauma. I started seeing a therapist because of the nightmares and the fact that I was panicking any time I got into a car. That led to me realizing there were some deeper issues, which we worked on. As part of that work, I got a physical. Started working with a dietitian to fix my diet and the smorgasbord of vitamin deficiencies it caused. I started working out, strength training 3 days and sprints or hit on 3 with our older sis. By the end of our first year of college, we had each gained about 30 pounds. By the end of the next year, I had lost half of it, but I was smaller at 134 pounds than my previous 120 because of the muscle mass. And that's been my size for the past half-decade. I found a new beautician, and she gave me long layers to make my natural curls be curls instead of waves of frizz. I always wanted but that my old one said would look bad and refused. I stopped bleaching it and let it go its natural dark blonde / light brown. I stopped spray tanning. Again, that's been my look for the past 5 years. I live in a rural area, and the internet isn't great. Things like FaceTime just aren't options, and I can't post a lot of pics on social media / see of it. This is relevant because a big issue is that May didn't see me over the quarantine. We talked on the phone a couple times a week, but it mostly revolved around her wedding planning. She got engaged before the Rona put us on lockdown. I wasn't her mo, so mostly I was being told decisions, not involved in the process. When it came to the bridesmaids' dresses, May sent our sister, SIL, and me a link and told us to get it in our size. Same with hair and makeup, but we had to arrange for a beautician because May's wouldn't do more than 4. And she wanted her friends at the appointment with her. Except she didn't do a bachelorette party with us, she did with her friends, or rehearsal dinner. So May didn't see any of us until the start of the wedding. She was livid. Apparently, she thought we would have stopped working out because of the Rona, even though we did it at home. Or that we would have stopped when she announced her engagement, so we didn't upstage her. She was mad because I didn't try to hide my scar and didn't tan, thought it would be implied. She made several snide remarks before throwing a drunk temper tantrum at the reception, basically accusing the three of us. But me ESP of trying to upstage her. I don't have that excuse B//C. I was a DD so sober, but I, quite famously, have a low tolerance for angry or crying drunks. I told her, if you're so insecure, you should have got off your ass instead of expecting us to lay on ours to make yours look better. It only got worse. Our family is on my side B//C. I didn't start it or do anything. But his family and her friends are giving me shit. I had a 1967 Impala 4-door that I bought in February 2019. A couple months ago I bought my first house that had a 2.5 car garage. I moved the car in and started tearing it down for a complete restoration. I had the body in one bay and the chassis in another, plus the whole garage filled with parts. About 2 months ago my girlfriend came to live with me during this whole crisis and the whole time has hated that car. She wants to park in the garage, but I have 2 acres of land with a lot of nice places to park under shady trees or hell, even in the barn if it has to be inside. I tell her tough luck, it's my house and it's not like I can just throw it back together real quick. Anyways, I was out of town for a couple days on a business trip for the small local company I work for. When I got back, my girlfriend was all smiles. Making me food all the time, doing all the chores, all that. I thought maybe she just was happy to have me home, but then I realized that I didn't see her car in its usual spot. I asked her where she parked so I could make sure I mow that area and keep it clean, and she said not to worry because she parked in the garage. I asked how and she told me to go check it out. Turns out that while I was gone she hired some people to come over and move everything related to that car, including the drivetrain, body, and chassis and all parts, and take it to the local dump / scrapyard. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I had spent over $11,000 on that car including new parts, services, and the car itself. I told her that I was going to be taking her to court for that and she brushed me off like I was being dramatic. I told her that it's done between us and to pack her things and leave. I admit I was really angry, but I did end up getting a lawyer. And as I have all the receipts for all that money spent and I have her on my house's security cam footage letting the guys in and watching them take it all, I think I can win. Her family and friends are absolutely blowing me up saying it's just a stupid old piece of junk, and that she cannot pay back all that money I spent, and that I should just let it go. But I have been putting all my time, effort, and money into that car for 1.5 years now, and god damn it if I am not going to get justice for what she did. I got a call from her mom about 20 minutes ago and she told me that I was ruining her daughter's life over a stupid car. I told her she ruined her own life. I've been gathering documentation and stuff and I'm about to head down to the police station and file a report, as suggested by Lots here. Went to the police station last night, was told to come back in the morning. Just got back and filed an official report against her for grand larceny and grand theft auto. I showed them all the receipts I had for the car and the footage of her letting the guys come and take it, as well as the title for the vehicle in my name. They said they will be in contact with all 3 parties, me, XGF, and junkyard guys, soon, and they will hopefully be able to recover some or all of the car. Just have to wait now. The junkyard guys apparently were in the middle of hiding it when the police came to ask them questions. It was on a forklift and they were gonna put it on top of a pile of cars that was hidden behind more piles of cars. They said it was theirs and they had the title, but obviously didn't have the title for it, and since they matched the VIN on the chassis and body to the VIN on my title, it was obviously mine. I know at least one person there has been arrested. I think he was in the camera footage I talked about earlier, but if it was the boss or whomever or even his specific charge. They also told me they would be looking into this specific junkyard for any other vehicles reported stolen. They said they haven't been able to get in contact with my ex just yet, but they're working on it. I'm just so glad they found my car. Luckily, I made quite an album of pictures detailing me tearing down the car, and so I can use that to prove what parts they had were mine, so I can hopefully get most or all of it back. Police haven't let me take it back home yet, as they say it is evidence or something, so hopefully I can get it back eventually. Thank you all so much for the support and advice. I have 2 sisters that I'm close with. I also have a niece, Leah. Leah's 16, and after my ex-wife decided to split up and divorce due to infertility problems that lasted for 5 years, I started a college fund for Leah to help her go to her chosen college. That was in 2019. Now I visit my mother's home, where my sister and Leah are living, every week to spend the weekend together. This past weekend I was asleep upstairs while my mother, my sister and Leah were in the kitchen. I came downstairs to grab a glass of water and heard my sister talking about my ex-wife expecting a baby with her new husband. This struck a nerve and I kind of froze from shock. I then heard Leah react to the news repeatedly saying, "I told you so, I told you so." Then explained she's always thought that I was the one with a problem for not being able to have a baby with my ex, but that I was too afraid to admit due to fragile masculinity. I could not believe what she said, but what made it worse is her following statement about how my ex was smart to get a divorce before it was too late. I went upstairs and into the room and shut the door and stayed there for hours. Mom and sister saw me about to leave and insisted to know what the problem was. I didn't want to argue, but I told them that I heard what Leah said about me. Leah stopped eating and got quiet. My sister tried to play dumb, but I told her I heard their entire conversation about my ex-wife and her pregnancy news. My sister tried to backpedal, saying Leah is just a kid who doesn't know much about this stuff and was just spouting nonsense. I told them I don't want to talk about it and they refused to let me leave, but I left eventually. I later sent my sister a text telling her about how hurt and devastated I was because of what Leah said, and told her I will no longer be responsible for funding her education. My sister kept trying to call, then texted saying Leah didn't mean what she said and offered to make her apologize, but I didn't feel comfortable being in the same room with someone who blamed me for something that was out of my control and something that literally turned my life upside down. My mother tried to get me to come over so we could talk, saying Leah doesn't deserve me turning my back on her like that. I haven't seen my sister nor Leah after what happened, but they are still trying to contact me, which means there's still a room for a discussion, and so I've decided to go see them tomorrow. Sit down together and have a long conversation. But this, I admit that I was mad when I told my sister about the college fund cancellation. I love Leah so much and see her as my own daughter. Unfortunately, her dad, my brother-in-law, is deceased, and so I understand losing a parent at a young age and relate to the kind of hurt she carries inside. Lost my father in an accident when I was 11, and I think that sitting down and talking things out is the best option before I make any decision. Also, one more thing to clarify, both my ex-wife and I were having these fertility issues. Both sides, but since my ex-wife got pregnant soon after her new marriage, then my family thought that I was the problem originally. It is what it is, and I'm learning to not words get in my head so easily. I'm not mad at anyone, I'm just trying to move on with my life like anybody else.